For more, let's bring in James Kim, Chairman and also CEO of AMCHAM Korea. He joins us live out of the capital, Seoul. Our good colleague Sherry Kang also is part of this conversation. James, good morning. Great to talk to you and appreciate your time. So this survey, would it be fair to say that most of your respondents, what they're actually worried about is, even though the country and the government and the people of South Korea have done a fantastic job managing and containing this virus, the biggest thing that companies, U.S. companies that do business in or with South Korea are concerned about is a second wave of infections. Is that fair?
Well, actually, the survey was done roughly 3 weeks ago. And I can tell you that first and foremost, I want to congratulate President Moon for a great job in handling this crisis in South Korea. If you're in Korea today, things are pretty back to normal today. Yesterday, the churches started to open, the bars, the nightclubs, and the gyms are finally open. In fact, when you take a look at just the sentiment, we're not really seeing a doom and gloom scenario. You take away, let's say, the travel and tourism industries. Everyone else seems to be doing okay. We have 30 board members at AMCHAM. Take a look at a company like Costco today. Their retail traffic is pretty steady today, and their online business has really, really gone up pretty well. McDonald's, they have over 400 stores in South Korea. They're in full operation. Their drive-through, their delivery platform is really, really powerful. So I see their business on the uptick. As far as the second wave is concerned, I guess we have to wait and see. But as of now, I feel very confident about what the Korean government has done to test, to contain, and to make sure because of their testing mechanism, we can pretty much control hopefully the new wave that might come our way. So I have a lot of confidence, and I'm very optimistic about Korea's full recovery.
Okay, fair enough, James. But your members, companies themselves that do business in or with South Korea, are they prepared for the potential of a second wave of infections hitting?
You know, everything we do, Martin, we take a very focused approach. In fact, I would say the first thing we do think about is safety is our #1 issue. Whether we have an event, in fact, we have our first board meeting scheduled for Thursday, and half are going to show up, virtually, half are going to be here in person. But we're going to have major social distancing, protocols in place. We're going to do temperature checks. We will continue to have people wear masks at the meeting. But I can tell you, we're not expecting a return to pre-COVID norms, but we're all preparing for a new norm, with a focus on hygiene and social distancing. In fact, I think that COVID-19, yes.
James, sorry to interrupt. This is Sherry in Hong Kong joining the conversation. What's really the mood that you're getting from 800 or so members of AMCHAM Korea in terms of the mothership in the U.S. is somewhat struggling or feeling the impact of the coronavirus? Are they, seeing any possibility of them retracting their business presence or investment prospects in South Korea? Sure, in 2019, FDI did okay, but in the first quarter of this year, that number actually plunged close to 18% on year.
That's correct, Sheree. I think that regardless of what happens in South Korea, whether the recovery is fully recovered shortly or not, we need the U.S. to recover. U.S. is a very important strategic partner to South Korea. Obviously, Korea is the 6th largest trading partner to the U.S. Very strong, ties, whether it's economic, whether it's military, cultural. So we want the U.S. to really, really recover. And because of the U.S. companies operating here, we want the mothership to do very well. And we also have the Course FTA, which I look at as the gold standard for trade agreements. And they should really help empower continued fair and reciprocal trade between various countries. But lastly, I think regional diplomacy is what's critical as well. Korea and China, given the THAAD situation a few years back, the Korean economy had a big setback. And the recent, situation between Japan and Korea was also a big detriment to the GDP growth. So I see that as long as the U.S. recovers, we continue with Course FTA, and there's regional diplomacy, I don't see why Korea is not a very good market for companies and different businesses to invest in South Korea.
Perhaps this next question is really about getting your reaction to the results of the general election that happened in South Korea last week. I know you recently wrote in a column talking about how the coronavirus provided this, lesson that, economic cooperation between South Korea and the U.S. is very much important. How do you think that relationship between South Korea and the U.S. will fare, especially with the current administration in South Korea gaining more traction politically and potentially pushing harder for progressive policies? It's a tax regime that's not exactly business friendly and more friendly towards labor and North Korea.
First and foremost, we had a record turnout of the election last week. 67% of the Korean population turned out despite COVID-19. So I think that was very, very successful. Let's not forget that the U.S. and Korea had enjoyed a 67-year history of such a powerful, partnership that I feel that regardless of what the policies are, there will always be a win-win partnership between the two countries. Now, I'm very pleased that President Trump sent a nice note to President Moon, congratulating him on the victory with the national election. And I remain very confident that regardless of the political landscape, smart people will get together, smart leaders will get together, and a win-win resolution will come out. In fact, one thing I'm very pleased with is that President Moon's administration has allowed AMCHAM and a lot of our leaders a lot of access so we can have good conversations about what it takes to win. I'm sure President Moon would love to see a very healthy, vibrant Korean economy.
James, good morning. It's Sri here in Singapore. China, there is this perception that they are first in and therefore first out of this health crisis. It is the paramount market for South Korean goods. Do your members feel that when you look at the leading indicators for China, that the rebound is sustainable?
Clearly, China is the largest trading market for South Korea. But as with any good business, I think diversification is critical, whether it's diversifying against, with customers, suppliers, partners, or even employees. And I think that companies have learned today that diversification more than ever is very, very important. That's why when I talk to my AMCHAM, board of governors, they're all telling me supply chain issues have not been a problem for American companies. It goes to show you that they're well managed. They have looked at the long term as their business strategy and not simply looking at short term. I really haven't talked to too many companies in my ecosystem who's telling me that because of supply chain, we cannot fulfill the needs of the consumer. So we feel from a Korea perspective, we are in actually a pretty good shape today.
Oh, that's interesting, James, because I thought that the supply chain issue was something of a dilemma for many companies. The perception is that they were too tightly connected to China, and in many ways, the conundrum is they have to be because it is such a paramount market. How does the supply chain change after all this?
Well, again, I think that you'll see continued professional management of supply chain issues. I think you will see even more experts in supply chain management getting involved so that those companies who have had supply chain issues will learn from it, transform from it, and hopefully become better companies because of that. And I don't think that as a business person that I am, I would never argue or try to focus on one customer, one country, or one market for a company's success, which is why diversification is really, really critical. It makes common sense. Why would you want to put all your eggs in one basket or one country or one customer? I wouldn't do that.
Nope, fair enough, and totally understood, James. I have to ask, though, your members, I'm sure they've been paying attention to, but I'm wondering how concerned they are. And what I'm referring to here is North Korean activity. They've been potentially taking advantage of the situation, this coronavirus crisis, and being, naughty, let's say. The number of projectiles that they fired is so far this year, and we're just into the Q1 now, is pretty high. Or is this something that your members have just learned to live with over time?
You know, this may not be the best time to spend, time addressing that question, Martin, but let me tell you my perspective. I'm really confident that the leaders from both Korea and the U.S. will manage the process with North Korea very carefully and wisely, and that there will be peace on this peninsula. I have a lot of confidence for that. I'm more focused on how do we get the economy back on track? How do we help Korea succeed in its recovery? Because back to work, I think, is very important. And this is where I want to talk about travel and tourism. As we know, every sector in the travel and tourism has been impacted pretty significantly. Hotels, airlines, retailers at airports. In fact, when you look at a hotel that has an occupancy rate of 5%, how do you survive? Or an airline who is no longer able to travel between U.S. and South Korea. That's 160,000 travel industry jobs that are impacted. So I hope that we can go back to something a little bit more positive about what can we do to get travel and tourism back. 146 countries out of 196 in the world have put a travel ban in South Korea. So I would really appreciate if both governments, whether it's U.S. or Korea or other governments, can consider options for like the 14-day foreigner quarantine period. That basically says you should not really come to South Korea. And when they're not here, we're not doing a lot of business longer term. And as you know, even right. Korea has a self-declared alert level 4. Simply say you shouldn't travel here. And I think we need to start relaxing it, of course, with safety as a core.
James, it sounds like your members are all trying to look over the abyss and prepare for the recovery when it does come, but only when it's really safe to do so. And only the public health agencies and the science will be able to tell us when that will happen. James, we wish you all the best, sir. Thank you very much indeed for that conversation. James Kim there, Chairman and CEO of AMCHAM Korea. Coming up next, Infosys ditches guidance, joining a growing list of businesses around the world struggling to assess the fallout of COVID-19. We'll dive into those earnings right after the break.